So traditional Catholics have this guy, Vigano. He's a cardinal or was a cardinal. As far as I can tell, this guy, Vigano, who is a far right extremist, and he is very much a trad Cath. He's probably might be there's cardinals who are Catholic cardinals who are pro-traditional, but he's the favorite of the traditional Catholics because of his style. You know, he's intense. He he says it like it is, as they say. It's obvious to anyone with eyes to see that in the traditional Catholic world, their heroes are um, aggressive, and they are fiery, and they get passionate and angry and have that kind of in general, you know, they have that kind of mode and method to their discourse. Now, Ripperger is a notable exception. I'll get into more details about him. I want to do a whole, you know, deep dive on him and his craziness because he is very measured and quiet. He says insane crap constantly, but it's much easier to digest and accept in terms of his delivery and everything. But Vigano, I'm talking about him because he became big in the trad Cath world when he accused of Pope Francis of being involved in covering up the crimes of Cardinal McCarrick. I'm not here to comment one way or the other at all, but in terms of that, but I am, you know, based on the trajectory this guy took later, and especially after his most recent comments, I don't trust him in any way, shape, or form. So I will need uh, a lot more than just his testimony to believe anything against Francis. And that's especially true because of his recent post, which has alienated a lot of traditional Catholics as well. Vigano has accused Francis, the current pope, uh, of essentially sexual abuse in a very, very vague term. He just said that he heard it secondhand from somebody, and that's all the evidence he's presenting. And many or a few traditional Catholic commentators have said that Vigano's gone too far this time. You know, he's just saying this without anything to back it up, anything to substantiate his claims. And the point I'm making here is that traditional Catholic heroes always fizzle out. They always go too far. They always um, do something that puts them out of favor and takes them out of the equation. It removes them from the acceptable conversation, I guess. Because what they reward and what they value is not sustainable. Aggression, fire, um, intensity, you know, when that is the air you breathe, when you spend when you spend all your time um, stoking up this fire within you of supposedly, you know, in their world, it's all righteous anger, of course. But traditional Catholic heroes, for the most part, with the exception of Ripperger, they all um, sustain themselves. Their oxygen is righteous anger, and that's not sustainable. Fire is not sustainable unless it is kept in a candle, kept in a fireplace, kept, stable and secured in one place to allow it to burn. Fire, allowed to just spread everywhere, uncontrolled, destroys everything. And eventually the fire will have nothing left to burn and it'll uh, go away itself. Men like Karapi, the priest who hurt me, Wolf, Michael Voris, um, Taylor Marshall to some people, although he's still very popular. Um, he definitely is. He definitely blatantly lied to his audience with that whole Pachamama thing. For those who aren't aware, he basically sent the guy out to commit vandalism, and that act of vandalism was celebrated by traditional Catholics across the board. And Taylor Marshall pretended to have nothing to do with this, and he interviewed this guy. And then it came out later that he totally was behind the whole operation. So if you're a Taylor Marshall fan, he lied to you at one point. He's probably doing it many times over. He's not an honest person. But the the feeling of certainty, the feeling of being on the right side, the feeling of being connected to ultimate truth, that's obviously what traditional Catholicism gives you. That's what all these high controls give you. It's kind of the the benefit you get, but the sacrifice you make is you sacrifice your entire identity. You are taught to hate everything that makes you unique, everything that makes you special, everything that makes you you is not important because the only good thing about you, the only thing that gives you any value is your connection to this group and how you benefit this group. And in the traditional Catholic world, um, their their goal is what they say, of course, the social reign of Christ the King, but it's their version of Christ, where they make him a king, and it's our. It doesn't matter if you don't think what we're doing aligns with Christ. It's our interpretation that matters because we were founded by people who knew Jesus, except for Paul, who didn't. But Paul's one of the prime architects of the Catholic Church, but he never met Jesus. Yet we're founded by Jesus. Just trust us. Just believe us. Anyway, you can see the circular logic there. Their heroes always fizzle out. They always fly too close to the sun, like Icarus, because they are encouraged constantly by these people. They say, yes, he says it like it is. He's on fire. He's a fighter. He's a warrior. He's a lion. Keep it up. Keep it going. Keep it going. And they keep it going and they keep it going. And they think that whatever actions they take, whatever words they say, however they treat people, it's not important because they're on the right side and the ends justify the means. Well, the ends don't justify the means if the means destroy the ends. And all of these people are just, undoubtedly lost and broken right now. You know, um, people like Voris, people like Karapi, probably Wolf the Priest who hurt me. I mean, they're all narcissists. So who knows if there's any, at this point, if there's any genuine self-reflection on their parts for the actions they've done. But it's just the basic rule of science as well, of Newton's law, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you go up to someone and you're aggressive toward them, you shove them into a wall, they're going to shove back. They're going to respond in kind. And these people just don't expect well, they do to some degree, I don't know, but obviously extreme actions, extreme behavior is going to have a reciprocal effect back on you. And when the response to their aggression, to their what I mean by aggression is their obsessive control of every aspect of your sexual life, um, and when they're exposed of going too far or of doing something wrong sexually or everything, they just crumble and fall apart. You saw Michael Voris crying on camera after he was exposed as being a liar and a fraud, living a double life as an active homosexual while just endlessly just shouting and spewing all this hatred and vitriol at the LGBT community and anyone who doesn't agree with the Catholic Church's, you know, pre- uh, preposterous, perverted, ancient sexual ethic that was for all intents and purposes, created by one sick man, Paul. That that intensity and that fire and that fury, um, you just if you're going to throw this shit out, you have to take it. And I am a peaceful person. I am a person who wants everyone around me to have stability and equilibrium and happiness because that's how we all that's how society flourishes, is if we're all stable and we all can go to bed at night with a sense of peace and security. We're obviously surrounded by anxiety today. There's no escaping that. It's just all around us. But the moral thing to do, obviously, in this anxious world, is to try to ease tension and to bring things down. But their high control groups live in a permanent tense state. They're the euphoric feeling that you get when you're in that you sometimes get in church, you know, it can often be a lot more common in traditional Catholic groups, like in the actual church service, the Latin Mass. It is very emotionally powerful because it's so controlled, and it can be very overwhelming, and especially you know, with the constant rhetoric of pain and suffering and penance and how bad you are and humans are bad and humans are evil, when that's constantly, you know, being fed to you, and you're in a constant intense frame of mind. You're in a constant intense state, and trad Catholics talk about, you know, the joy and peace, but it's a false peace. It's a veneer of peace because their entire worldview is about constant suffering and constant tension and constantly hating yourself and constantly hating your sexuality. So it's just it's just ridiculous to say that that kind of attitude and approach to life in any way is going to foster peace and safety. Um, you know, surrender. Surrender is not serenity. You know, um, you have to have a strength within you to resist something crazy. And there are many things in traditional Catholicism that they would objectively agree is crazy on a natural level, but they say we just accept it because we just trust God because, you know, He loves us so much, and we, and I'm, and in all these questions, every single time there's a question of does this make sense? The Tradcath solution is always to make you stop this line of questioning by overwhelming you with guilt, overwhelming you um, with unworthiness, and making you feel bad for even going down, for even thinking these thoughts. And so this life is about balance. Life is about the pendulum swinging because we want intense happiness in life. We want, obviously, to experience euphoria, but we can't be excited all the time. It's not just, we're not built for that. We have to sleep at night. We have to recharge. There's a order. There's a structure. There's a rhythm to the way we live our lives. We can't be in one mind state, in one frame of mind all the time. But that's exactly what they expect of you in trad Catholicism, and they when it's not working, it's your fault, and you need more grace, more fairy dust. And the again, people who are thought leaders or are you know, people in the tradcath world who are respected and looked up to, and who tradcaths go to for guidance and everything, again, not they're not across the board intense angry people, but that's generally what gives you what propels you. And so that fire is rewarded, and the fire just burns out because it consumes everything. um and it leads to the right thing is hubris, it is pride. And of course, obviously in the Traktrath world, they'll say, no, we hate pride. We need to be humble and everything. Well, uh, thinking that the attitude of I that humility, that questioning, that feeling of where I'm wrong, that all goes out the door when it's anything the church says. Obviously, we all understand. We've established why, where that idea comes from. It was founded by God, but you just have to appreciate and understand the circular loop you're in. I can't question it because that's immoral, but I have to be humble and accept I might be wrong, but they can't be wrong. But if they can't be wrong, and why can't I be wrong? It's just men. It's just men. Paul was a man. Peter was a man. These are men like you and I saying these things. God is not present, and that's acknowledged. It's the thing that's so frustrating about this is the Eucharist. Okay, I've always been very careful when I talk about the Eucharist to some degree because of just how deep this belief is, but and how intense people get over this. But let me just put it this way. Many of you, including another hero of yours, Strickland, Bishop Strickland, acknowledged in an interview with Glenn Beck that the Eucharist is ridiculous. He said it like this. He said, "You might say the Eucharist, like the body, that bread is really Jesus's body. You might say that's ridiculous. That's our faith. That's all his defense was. You just gotta believe it because we said so. That's as far as it goes, and that's not moral to lead that way, to teach that way, to govern that way. Um, it's not moral to lead based on it's not moral to wield authority um, without information. If you're not informing your the people who you're leading, if you're not informing them of the legitimacy of your authority, and you're simply wielding your authority over them like a cudgel, that's not a natural. That's not the natural state for humans to live in. That's not how we're supposed to live. That wouldn't that's the equivalent of the Soviet Union, which the right trad cats hate so much, right? It's the same method of just believe us, do what we say, or else because we said so. That's not love. You have to respect the intellect and the feelings and the opinions. You still might ultimately go against their will because their will might be wrong and yours might be right, but you have to respect them as people, as individuals, um, who, and you have to acknowledge in humility that your authority and your judgment and your rules for them might be flawed and might be wrong. And my message, my conclusion here is I know the trad cats, for most of them, they might hate watch me, but they're not going to actually listen listen to anything I say or take anything I say seriously. I'm mainly addressing, in some ways, the outside world or just normal people who are not involved in high control groups to so they can understand more the dangers of traditional Catholicism and so people won't get involved in it. But this is also to people who kids who are in this environment who are having doubts, but the idea of actually acting on those doubts is so terrifying and overwhelming because I'm just trying to give people ways to crystallize their thoughts and to make their situation seem more clear and make more sense because again it's not sustainable. The environment that they live in is just it's all based on the idea that it's built around, that it's we need a solid structure in life. We need something to cling to. We need, this unified thing that never changes, and so we can always count on it and always rely on it, because otherwise we're just blowing in the wind. But that's just not how life works. You can't, you might have a pleasant memory from your childhood, but you can't rebuild every circumstance around you to duplicate that experience, because people grow up, buildings get torn down, uh, people die. There's life is constant change and constant adaptation. That's beautiful, I think, but it's challenging as well to some degree, and the challenge can be so overwhelming for people that they lock themselves in and completely blind themselves to any outside information, any challenge to their way of thinking, and they direct all their energy into pursuing the aims of this group, and putting their entire life's essence into the group, into the mission, into the vision of society that they have. And it's all based around ideas that has been disproven. Again, I'll say this again. They think the sun goes round the earth and the earth is still. At a basic fundamental level, traditional Catholics think that, because that's what a pope said definitively. Just emphasizing that again, just to, again, make clear the contrast here, the dichotomy between absolute unflinching certainty and moral authority, and aggression and delivering your moral authority, while at the same time beliefs that are uh, that most children would laugh at. And not to even get into all the stuff about demons and demonic possession, and how, that's more for the Ripperger video. But trad Cath heroes almost always fizzle out. They reward what is not sustainable, and the the constant denial to have a different understanding of how human beings really operate, and the refusal to think that maybe these ancient people didn't weren't as close to Jesus as they claimed, and don't speak for him as much as they claim. And I'm not even going to get into Jesus, whether he was real or whether he was divine. I think he was a real guy. I just don't think he was the Son of God. That's another topic. But it's just blind energy. It's just blind fury. It's just blind, you know? And that's not sustainable. That's going to burn out. And it's just a pattern you can see over and over again. Like I've said before in this context, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.